Welcome to another episode of Navigating Complexity. Today, we're thrilled to bring you the inspiring journey of Chelle Neff, the visionary entrepreneur behind Urban Betty. From humble beginnings to creating a groundbreaking employee-first salon model with 3 thriving locations and a remarkable $6 million in annual revenue, Chelle's story is one of grit, resilience, and relentless ambition. She dives into her early struggles, lessons learned, and her mission to empower stylists in an industry often underestimated. Get ready for an episode packed with invaluable insights, laughter, and authentic vulnerability. Let's jump right in.
Welcome to Navigating Complexity. Man, what is this?
It's 11.
Episode 11.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 11, Chelle Neff.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Well, I know you guys are friends, but I'm curious because I do all kinds of just have this entrepreneurial mind where I just love absorbing what people do with their lives. And so when you and I were talking about this episode and how you created Urban Betty, and I was immediately, I wanted to just kind of know the story. Like, the stories are always great. So you want to just kind of dive into that, what Urban Betty is for the audience?
Yeah.
And then,
So it's been a wild ride. Urban Betty, first and foremost, my real name is Betty Michelle, named after my grandma. So she thinks Urban Betty's named after her. We'll let her believe that.
It is.
Yes, it is, 100%. I started the salon in January. It'll be 20 years ago.
okay.
I did cosmetology in high school. I came from a very poor background, wasn't any talks of going to college. That wasn't, it was just like, figure it out, survive.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, my high school has this program. It's free. All I got to do is pay for my supplies. This sounds like a good route. In the interim, before I figure out what I really want to do, I didn't know. I was 16 and started cosmetology, got my license when I turned 18, immediately went to Supercuts because the bar was low. And I was like, let me figure out if I'm good at this, if people... Yeah. And so it was basically, I call Supercuts like a sweatshop for hairstylists. Like, you are just busting out haircuts 4 times an hour sometimes. And
Wow.
you would not have wanted a haircut by me back then. And about after a year of doing that, I kind of went to a little bit better quality salon, Regis in the mall, and then worked my way up to higher end salons, figure out what I was good at, what I wanted to do. And 10 years later, opened Urban Betty. And it started out with just me and one person paying rent per week for a chair. I had 6 chairs in a salon. And we are now an all-employee-based model with 3 locations, almost 100 employees,
Wow.
and will gross over $6 million this year.
Wow.
So, and I retired from doing hair in 2017.
Okay.
So it's been a wild ride. And if you told my teenage self that this is where I would be sitting today and this is what I would be dealing with in a great way. I appreciate what I do. And I would have never believed you. Like, I would have just passed out on the floor. I just thought I would do hair till I was 80 years old. So it's crazy. Yeah.
That's wild. One of the most interesting things, maybe you could tell us a little bit more, is that W-2 employee model, and it's so different from the norm. And then you've done a great job with the Bettys, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
So it's because I was 27 when I opened my brick and mortar location, and I did not want to be anyone's boss. That freaked me out. So I was like, let me just have people in here paying me rent. I'll do everything else. I'm just going to do hair in the corner, and they're going to pay all the bills. And that is not what was happening. It was people coming and going when they want. The salon would be trashed. I was working 6 days a week, doing Costco runs, making less money than when I had just been in a suite by myself paying rent. And I was like, I don't understand why I can't get ahead here, why this dream isn't happening.
Right.
And so I had a person, I feel like a godsend, that came in one day and just said, do you need an assistant? And I thought, God, the universe really has hit me over the head. And I said, I do, but I have $200 a week I can pay you. And she said, okay. And this would have been about 6 months after opening. So, almost 20 years ago. And I did not know how to pay her. I didn't know how to do a paycheck, none of that. Like, that was the one thing I was like, I don't want to have an employee, but I have to have an employee. There's no way. And called my CPA on the way home, who was my aunt, and was like, what the hell? I had literally had a panic attack driving home, thinking about having one employee.
Yeah.
And she goes, there's a program called QuickBooks. You're already using it. It can make a paycheck for you. It will take the taxes out. It's very easy. Here's what you do. Got my first employee, got her on the floor doing hair a year later as a commission employee at that point, because she was just salary before that. And I was like, this isn't that hard. And she actually listens to what I say. And I'm making more money off of her. Like, okay, I think I can do this. So from then on, every assistant that I trained became an employee. And then we became a hybrid model, which is half rental, half commission. And at that point, I was like, I'm not taking any more of these people that are paying me rent because they're a nightmare. They walk all over me. I can't be their boss. This culture is a nightmare. It just didn't work. And so they basically all left to open their own salon. And it was hard for me, but it was a good thing because then I just completely cut out that model. And it just evolved into that naturally. I don't think I could have started the business that way because I had no idea what I was doing. I needed to dip my toes slowly in the water and acclimate and figure it out because I was so young and had no experience. And if you think I was making money, I wasn't yet. It took 8 years to make a profit, and I'll get into that later. But it was a way to that, I should say. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I totally get the Supercuts thing because way back in the day, that's where I used to go. And you know what was funny about that is that, you know, you talk about 4 haircuts an hour and it makes so much sense. What's funny is like I never, it was almost like Russian roulette. You never know what kind of haircut you're going to coming out. It's like
I never knew what kind of haircut I was going to give.
and then you're like, they're asking you all the things like what should you use? Like they're asking you to tell them how to make it happen. I was like, I don't remember.
No.
It's been like 4 or 5 weeks since this and I don't remember. So totally understand how you know, from the other side, you know, the customer there is like kind of figuring that out. I'm curious though. So obviously work environment. And a lot of times it's great to get into work environments to understand how the business model operates and then progress to a nicer environment. And that's just kind of going up the ladder. I'm curious where you got and I think I know the answer, but where you got the umph to be like, okay, now I'm going to just open my own shop versus like.
This is a great question because it just hit me like a bolt of lightning one day while sweeping hair in a salon that I was so miserable at because the owner there was she would just sit in her grand tower in my head and count her gold coins. And now as being an owner, I'm like, I'm sure some people think that about me. It's very far from the truth.
Right.
However,
it's not gold, it's silver.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I'm wearing my fur coat. But she drove a Mercedes, she wore a fur coat. I thought, this woman is just taking everyone's money.
Yeah.
She ended up filing bankruptcy, by the way, years later. Yeah. However, it was all a facade. And I do know that she was not paying people correctly. I would get my paycheck and it'd be like, well, this is your money. I'd be like, well, how did you get to this number?
Right.
Well, we can't tell you that. And I thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I feel like that's where that stemmed from is like, well, thank God I was young. Because, you know, when you're young, you think you know everything. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it better than everyone I know. And then I was like, no, I don't know what the hell I'm doing either. So it was really, it stemmed from me wanting to do it differently than other people. And I think that's why most people open salons. Because like, I could do it better than her. And then you get humbled very quickly. And I got humbled and I get humbled every single day. So that I think that's just where it came from. But I'm always have been driven my entire life. And I can't tell you where that comes from, but there's always this need to like hit the next mark, hit the next mark, hit the next mark. And I really would like that to chill out, but it's just inside me and I can't turn it off.
The burning desire.
No, exactly.
I gotta do something. Yeah. It's growth, right? It's how, like everything I was listening to you from at 16 is like, well, what are my growth options? You know, I can do this and it's free. It at least gets me a start. It gets my foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then that leads you down the path, but then you just stay there long enough until you can't tolerate that anymore, tolerate the boss and then figure out, well, I can do this better. And I think, you know, at the heart of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurism, and I've interviewed 350 by this point, probably, it is this inner desire, that vision that I've got to go create something, and I see a solution to a problem that is
right.
That's better than what's currently offered.
Yes.
And so
yeah. And I feel like our industry is not treated well. People kind of treat it as like just a bunch of ragtag misfits out there, artists doing hair that are just kind of different. And no, we are people who take our careers very seriously, and there are people that do want to do hair for the rest of their life, and they deserve benefits. They deserve health insurance. They deserve IRAs. They deserve career paths. They deserve goal setting, all of those things. And that's what I have created in my salon, and I feel that's what sets us apart from other places. And that's not for everybody. Like, we certainly have people that they just, they want to go rent a booth somewhere and do all whatever for themselves. And I did that. I get it. But that is like exactly what you're talking about, is through each experience, working hourly, commission, booth rental. I worked at a beauty supply for a little bit. I worked as a receptionist at Supercuts before doing hair there. I got to see every single facet and corner of our industry and gain that knowledge. And I think ultimately it did help me in the end. And why Urban Betty is so successful is because I chose each one of those career paths that were nightmares at the time, like organizing a perm display at a beauty supply. Ugh, who thought that would help me? But later it did, because then I knew how to organize retail displays for my salon. So it did help. Yeah.
Still learning the entire way.
Yeah.
Going into, so frustration, I'm going to open up my own shop. And back, you mentioned someone kind of helped you kind of with that decision. I when you first started talking about, someone said something to you. Who was that? Was that a mentor, or is that or maybe I just made it up. I thought you had said that you had someone that kind of helped you kind of see something differently. But
my aunt, my CPA.
She made it possible, right? She made it possible.
She did. Yeah.
Here's a question that you had, and she's like, well, this is easy. Here's the
like,
solution.
She deals with numbers all day. To her, it's just very much, you can figure this out. Because I thought, how do you create a paycheck? I've got to know what the taxes are, what this is, what that is. And she's like, no, there's a computer program for that. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So that was cool. Yeah.
From that, though, that's one component of building a business.
Yeah.
It's your very first employee.
Yeah.
Things get more complex from there.
Do they?
So So I want to go into, because what fascinates me about your story is that I get the first part, starting my own business, but then, as you just mentioned, there are people that just kind of do that the rest of their lives, and they got to stay in that lane the rest of their lives, and then it's happy and it's good for them.
100%, yeah.
But then there are choices you make over time that says, I want to do something else. I want to go create 3 studios and 100 employees and $6 million in gross revenue. So that's the story I want to get it to next. Like, how do you go from one employee to seeing that vision? Were there mentors involved? Like, what was the reasoning?
I initially, I had to get a therapist, a consultant team, like all of the things. I come from not knowing how to ask for help. And so things were brought in front of me, like that first employee, second employee, third employee, fourth employee. And then we were outgrowing the smaller studio space we were in. It was like 1,500 square feet. It was 10 chairs at that point. And so I went, I know how I'll solve this. I'll get a space double the size. Oh, I see your smile. That's just double the expenses. It wasn't double the revenue. What am I doing? And then I was like, okay, I don't think that was smart. But people kept coming. Like, we had guests. We had, I don't know, I feel like I've created a really well-known, great brand that attracts people to come work for it. And that's huge. The name is kitschy. I just feel like that has helped with it. So
when did you come up with that?
I came up with that in 2002, just when I created my first website.
Okay.
At night, it kind of hit me. So the name, I feel like that helps. And so I, again, was just spinning my wheels saying, I don't know why I'm like negative $2,000 in the bank. We can't even do direct deposit because I don't have enough money to pay these people. And they'll give them a paycheck on Friday. I'm like, can you not cash that till Monday? And I'm getting paid, by the way, from the hair I'm doing, not from the salon.
Right.
And so one of our distributors that came in, he's like the owner of the Redken distributorship. He said, I've got this great consultant group. I think you would really benefit from them. It's XY $1,000. And I said, I can't afford that. And he said, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to pay for you to go on this trip. Also, because it would make us a Redken only. So I'm like, I understand. I get it. But I'm glad he did it because I was like, I can't afford. And he said, you can't afford not to.
Right.
And that stuck with me. Like, it's so cliche, but it's so true. And they were the first people that showed me systems, structures, creating a level system, having personal development meetings with people, setting goals.
Got it.
All the things that they do in corporate America that we're all like.
How long was that course? Like, because that's a lot.
It was a lot. It was like 3 days.
Okay.
Of immersive, but then they set you up with a business consultant that comes in. She's still our consultant to this day. We see her several times a year.
Yeah.
We're like never leaving them. And it's called Summit, and it's for hairstylists and salons, and it's hard. It is not easy. And I had people leave. I had people tell me, this is the worst thing you're ever going to do. No one's going to want to work here. And I'm like, I'm not making money right now, so anything you say to me is not going to scare me because I've got nowhere to go from here. Right. And cut to, I was like, at one point, I remember going on a cruise for a friend's birthday with all the money I didn't have, and the bank saying, it's negative $8,000. Or I'm like, there's money coming in, like the calls, the overdraft fees. It was just like this. Yeah. Within, I think it was 3 months of bringing on this consultant team and just switching our price menu, not cutting anyone's pay. We all know where it's going. I was a positive of $50,000+ in the bank, just changing our pricing structure. And in 3 years, I was retired from being behind the chair completely. Did not need, the salon was actually making enough money to give me a salary, and I could do the things I enjoyed. So now I did hair for 21 years. So I put in my time. I do not miss it. I don't ever want to go back to doing hair. I don't think I physically could. It's not an easy job. I hope I answered your question. I kind of went off on a tangent.
It was perfect. And what I heard there, one is, and often here in on the entrepreneurial journey, is failures. You learn from every failure.
Every day.
And then mentorship and education, which is, when you have someone that says, that person that stepped in, even though there was a business reason behind it, it's like, I'm going to invest in you because I can see some things there. Yeah. I'm assuming that they probably don't invest in everyone. It's just like people that they see that spark with.
Because we were doing a ton of volume. Like, it was one of those businesses that look like from the outside, they must be banking. And I'm like, it's costing me more to run it than I'm making from it. Yeah.
Right. And then the cash flow thing, because that's the cash flow thing is, it doesn't matter the size of business. The cash flow thing, whether you're doing 6 million or you're doing 100, there's still the slow cash flow that comes in, slow cash flow. You hear these stories all the time. You hear FedEx, one of the stories I remember, FedEx. You guys remember this story?
Yeah, gambled.
Where they were down to not making enough payroll to pay the employees, and so they went to Vegas and gambled and won and came back and turned things around. So these businesses have these stories, but a lot of going back, a lot of isms or sayings that come back that you've heard before, and like, oh, that's why that's said now. It makes sense. Yeah. One of them that comes to mind is necessity is the mother of all invention, right? Because when you're in these struggling spots and you're struggling, it's like, where's cash flow coming from? You get creative and you learn and you do things a little different. And so it's that need to change, the need to grow. It is that power of that growth. So I hear it loud and clear.
And always tweaking it and always perfecting it. Right. I remember asking my consultant, when am I going to get comfortable? I keep doing this stuff so I can just sit back. And she goes, if you keep growing, you're never going to be comfortable. Every time you bring on more people, now you've got different issues and different ways you have to come about things. And I went, cool. So let's just accept that and go. And yes, my life is much better than when I don't know how I did all the things back in the day. Am I more comfortable? I don't know.
You're more comfortable. I think of it as you're more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's what you
better
just
at
embrace that. Yeah. Well, having a toddler will do that to you too.
Yeah. So I'm also curious to unpack a little bit of how when it's hard and you're getting that call and you're like, okay, my balance is zero.
Yep.
I don't know how I'm going to pay. Like, why would you keep going?
Ego.
Yeah.
1,000% ego. I just was like, I'm going to keep going until the wheels fall off. Like, I'm going to keep figuring out ways to, I don't know. I was not going to give up. It crossed my mind for sure. But I just was like, I can't. And I went through a crazy divorce right before that, where that person had tried to take half my business because they thought it, again, was worth all this money. And I'm like, if you can find this amount of cash, I'll split it with you. And then when the attorneys got involved, they were like, oh, never mind. It's half the debt you would be responsible for. They ran away really quickly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it was my ego and just, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I'm very much that person. Like, if there's a problem, I'm going to solve it. Wanted to sing the rap song for a minute, but yeah, I don't know. That again, that's just one of those things. I'm going to keep going.
I probably imagine also there's this, and you pointed to this earlier, comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
At some point, you're just like, you've seen it before.
You're desensitized.
It's
You're like, oh, another hard conversation.
Shut down.
Like,
Yeah.
whatever.
You're
Oh,
like,
well, there's another water leak.
Yeah.
Great. I
Yeah.
can't wait.
well, once you've, I tell my daughter this, just this, I look at life like the game of Donkey Kong, where you've got these barrels that are coming your way, and you've got to like figure out how to jump and get around it
all day. Yeah.
And then you get to another level, and it's the same thing. But
Yeah.
once you see the barrel coming down, you know what you need to do.
Yeah.
You run at it and you jump over it and you move on with it. But it just gets hard. You just see them, and so I see that in business a lot, where you have something when you were 27 and you had that first like employee. I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
Or even like the other thing I want to like pull a thread on is personalities, because you got 100 different personalities now that a lot of times that stuff escalates, right? So it's not easy. So when you're like, I have more, but then I have more as far as to deal with.
And and I love when, I don't love it, but I laugh at when people, we don't have any drama. Are you all robots? I'm sorry. If you have two humans in a room, you're going to have some drama.
Yeah.
I don't care when, I don't care how, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And this, we're all a family. I mean, that is so old and tired.
Yeah.
We're not all a family. You have that many people. They're going to be people that don't like each other and will never like each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Just do your own thing. Let's be an adult.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that are always worried about what everyone else is doing.
Right.
If you worried more about what you were doing, you might be doing better than them. But because you're so obsessed with them, and it's just wild things, like every week I come in and there's just something new. And like you talk about jumping over a barrel, it's never what you expect.
Right.
Everything that I worry about never happens. And then some wild BS.
Yeah.
This week, we just had to have a staff meeting. I had to get up and talk about why we have certain things in the way we do. Like we have a service charge, like restaurant industry. The restaurant industry has a service charge. Everyone signs that ticket, never bats an eye. But my God, if your salon has a service industry charge, service charge, can you tell I'm fired up? People, well,
Right.
they go, what, excuse me? And then people get freaked out about charging it and all the things. And I had to explain, like, this is why we have health insurance, we have IRAs, we have an inventory person, we have a marketing person. We're able to pay people living wages, and it's that service charge. And then they were like, oh, and I'm like, if you don't charge this service charge, you're in effect stealing from the company. And it hit them. And it's just one of those things. I'm like, I didn't think about that when,
Right.
Yeah. And so again, you jump over that barrel when it hits you, and it hit me in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Well, and one of the other things too that I've observed is that, you have these kind of people challenges, right? In this business. And then you chose to take on product challenges. So I'm curious that is something to kind of understand.
Here's my advice to everyone. Do not start your own product line. If you have a successful service business, you don't need to add that on. Again, ego got in my way, and now I'm stuck with this purchase order contract, and they're like, when are you getting this $30,000 of product that's sitting in our warehouse? And I'm like,
I don't want to pick it up.
Let me borrow from my personal savings and store it in my garage while the winter months are cold. That's real entrepreneurial life. So we'll be having a big sale on Urban Betty products soon. Very soon. They are great products. I love them. I use them. It's great. I'm trying to compete with celebrity owned hair care.
Yep.
Hair care that's in my store that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is not full of chemicals, scents. Mine was very much created for me because I'm sensitive to all that. However, I don't have the budget right now to really, or the time and energy to put into that I would like to.
Right.
So anyway, I would recommend not doing it.
It's so funny.
This is one of those things I'm learning lessons.
It's a very, that was a mistake that was made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a CPG entrepreneur that has a garage without a pile of product
Thank
in it.
you.
It's like, no, it's like a very common thing, and it happens to everybody, right? And it's like that's how you learn that inventory is super expensive, right?
Yeah. And I was just I'm getting on TikTok Shop, and literally right before I came here was trying to list the products, and that's been an all week thing because they don't make that easy. And I get it. They don't want just anybody selling anything for safety reasons. But I was like, I thought I would just sync with my Shopify and it'd be ready to go. And it's not that easy. But they will be.
That is one of the biggest things as a business owner that I share with you is all the tech required for just something super simple.
Yes.
It's like, really? And then all the password requirements. And I'm like, I have an assistant like, they need a new password. I'm like, can you just deal with it? No, it's got to come to me. I'm like, I don't want to deal with it.
I know, because I was like, I can get my marketing director and my inventory director to hook it all up to Shopify. And they're like, no, they're wanting articles of incorporation. They're wanting the cosmetic licensing agreement. They're wanting purchase orders. I'm like, tax forms. I'm like, I guess I'm doing this. Cool.
Well, and it's funny too, because it's like everything's always harder than you think. I think that's
so, and nobody knows. They think I'm just at home eating bonbons, and I'm like, guys, I've been working on this TikTok Shop for however long. 4 or
5 hours.
And every time I turn around, it's a new email. They're going, you haven't set up this yet. Well, I know I haven't, guys. Y'all have made it really hard.
Exactly. How about we do it more simple, huh?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing that it maybe it'd be good to talk a little bit about. So you spent all this time like empowering your employees, right? Like you were talking about. And so, I mean, how is that translated into business success, or what are the surprises or learnings there?
I think a big part of it for me, the hardest part of it is when you empower people to a certain level, especially if they are type A, they want to go do their own thing. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I did. So it's really hard sometimes for me to embrace that and be okay with it, because sometimes I handle it really well. And then other times I don't handle it well. I had someone leave recently, and she called me and was going to work for a competitor, and I handled it like a total asshole.
Emotions.
And
it happens.
A lot of times it's because also, and I'm not using this as an excuse, but crazy personal things have been going on in my life. And I then to get out on work stuff. Mm-hmm. And it happened in that moment. And could I have handled it better? 1,000%. But it is what it is. So that's what I struggle with when you empower people and you create a great place to be. It's hard to be like, well, why would you want to go anywhere else? But I also understand it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I was just at this talk the other day. Bill Gurley, the venture capitalist, he did, Uber, and pretty famous fellow. But he was saying that we were talking about like, what is the right amount of executive turnover in a business? And it was an interesting discussion. There was no kind of obviously final answer, but the consensus in this room full of CEOs was it's somewhere between 40% and 70%, because in terms of retention, right? Or successful hires that, 40 to 60, maybe 70% of them work out. And I think part of it is the top 25% always leave or move on. And if your business isn't growing it at a way that, or in a fashion that it can accommodate them, you're going to lose those folks. And you're going to get it wrong sometimes, right? And so when you start to think about like, if you had a software company with 60% churn, you'd be like, oh my God, like that's crazy. But that human side of the business just feels like it kind of
it's hard not to take it personal. Yeah, it is hard not to take it personal. And I would like to think I've outgrown it, but some people you get more attached to, and you do take it personal, and you do just figure it out. And it sucks to lose those relationships, because you will had thought of someone as a friend.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I guess not. But that's life. And again, that's part of being human and all that stuff. Yeah.
That's another barrel. It's just one of those things where it's like, that's a barrel. It's coming. But yeah. And then also to understand, like, you were saying that, it brought memory some of the things that I've had to do in the past. And definitely, you're hanging out one day, having happy hour with people and doing all the things. The next day they're working somewhere else.
The next day they stole their entire client list. And committed cyber fraud. And, oh, I'm sorry. Am I saying this aloud? Maybe? And then they're mad at you. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
If you did this anywhere else, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then I'm the villain.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Cool.
Right.
That was probably TMI.
No. I mean,
but again,
this is the name of the show, Navigating Complexity, because it is, and you pointed it out there, it is, a lot of people have a perception of this is what this person is doing.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that life is much, much simpler if you're just doing one thing, if you're just cutting hair
yes.
Right.
Yes.
Instead of having 100 different kids.
Yeah.
Because there are different mentalities and different things that you've got to kind of mentor and teach and all kinds of things to get them to just even work with each other, and then much less kind of help the business go forward, sounds like. Yeah.
And it's the thing that, even though I have this an amazing management team that really handles the majority of everything and they're a great buffer, it still ultimately lies on my shoulders at the end of the day. It's like when a guest comes in and gets a bad haircut, and Matt gave them a bad haircut, and they're like, it's not about Matt, it's about Urban Betty. Urban Betty gave them the bad haircut. I'm going to tell everyone I know Urban Betty sucks. And I'm like,
yeah,
that amazing,
fire that person, and they're never around again. It
and
doesn't
if they
matter.
had a bad meal, they would go back. Let me give the restaurant another try, or I'm going to go write a bad review. I've been here 10 times. One time someone did something I didn't like. I'm going to burn this place to the ground, and I'm just like, why? They're
so emotional about the hair, and
you see it every day.
Exactly, and a meal is like, all right, my next meal is I've forgotten.
And 3 more tomorrow.
100%. I'll go spend $200 going out to eat, but if their hair was $200, I'm like, you see that every day. You look in the mirror. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Other complex areas that you're managing because I imagine also, like, during the middle of all this, as you're growing, you have a toddler, and so how does that impact decisions?
Oh my gosh!
And
so a year ago, I don't know how I'm still standing. So a year ago, we were right on top of, I was opening the third location, which took 2 years and went hundreds of $1,000s over budget, as they all do. And right in the middle of all that, my toddler was having issues at the daycare he was at. And we needed to pull him out of that daycare. And the day his last day of daycare was literally the first day of my third location opening. And I had to scramble to find childcare. And the school I wanted him to go to couldn't get him in. They were like, till August. And I'm like, it's January. So I found interim childcare, which was not great. And I was trying to juggling opening a new location, still having to be home with my child like 50% of the time. And I figured it out and I made it work. And then we were also looking at purchasing an investment property because I was like, let's do that. And now I'm like, again, had I known all the BS that was going to happen, I probably wouldn't have done it. Like most things you do that are daring in life, if you knew what was about to happen all at the same time, I'm kind of glad I didn't. But we were like, well, we're purchasing this investment property, opening a third location, having to stay home more with my child, daycare, like all of those things. And again, you have to come in and be like, how's everyone doing? Life is awesome. Because I've got to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. But I'm not fully masked all the time because that's exhausting. I do let people know I am vulnerable. I cry a lot, and I've cried in front of people because I let them know but there is a point where I can't be like manic or anything. But that was last year. And now I keep looking at this year and I'm like, oof. And my child is like night and day, obviously because mom was really stressed out and your children are a reflection of you.
Right.
And that was very much part of that too. And so I don't know. I just, again, kept jumping over the barrels.
What's your vision for the future?
I love that. Well, it's just going to get more and more comfortable. I am in the midst. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and the reason I asked that question is because you went from one location to 3, and so something's driving to make those things. So, like, what's that bigger vision?
Well, don't ask me if I'm opening another location, because right now it's a big no. Because we're still getting the third one like ready. I mean, it's been ready, but it's still up and happening, and it's been amazing. Like, its growth rate has doubled what it took us to open our second location. So it's happening. It's great. However, my goal right now is to continue to keep stepping back a little bit more. And I am about 2/3 of the way through writing a memoir, which I'm excited about. And it's not a business book. And, you're going to write a business book? I'm like, I think they got it out there. Like, maybe eventually I'll do that. Right. But I have Matt knows, crazy stories from like we all do, like coming from Abilene, living in trailers, parents that were teenagers, parents that were drug addicts. My brother's in prison now. Like, I'll tell you all this stuff because I have got lots of great stories about how you overcome all that. And I would love to tell that story and like a crazy first marriage, all of those things. And for a while I was like, this is scary to be so vulnerable and show people that. But one person said to me, if it helps one person or they can relate to that and their life is better because they read it, it's totally worth you to write that. If only one person. And I go, okay, I'm going to do it. And it's just going to be more cathartic for me at the end of the day. Yeah.
100%. As you were saying that, and actually this is a question I had earlier, is as you mentioned being at the top, you ever feel alone?
All the time.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was able to learn years ago, I started a magazine called Founding Austin. And the very first person I interviewed, I was able to see a mirror reflection. Like, oh, I'm not alone. There's another person that is going through the exact same challenges as me, but you're still alone in your own journey. However, others, you have a community of people that can understand it. Like, I think we all can understand what you're going through. It's like we've all kind of seen it in a certain way. So from that perspective, sharing the stories is huge because it helps you understand that you're not the only one facing this, and others, handle it different ways, and you can also learn from it. So I'm all about that book because I think those stories need to be told because there's other people that are exactly in that situation right now, and it gives them hope. Yes. Gives them vision. Yeah. So. Yeah. But now I'm curious about some of the stuff if you want to talk about because that is part of navigating the complexity. Yeah. I mean, one thing is like growing this business, but also while you're dealing with, the hardships of having a brother in prison or parents that or being raised in a way that's more challenging than somewhat. So
I think it was the other day, this realization hit me. If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad before, I mean, who hasn't? In the business world.
I actually haven't. It's funny that you mentioned that. Authors, it's the next up in my
Don't
Kindle.
Look at the author on Twitter. Yeah. That's not, the book is not a reflection of however, he was exposed to having a poor dad, very much like myself, but his best friend had this rich dad. And Rich, to me, Rich was middle class. If you had a house that wasn't a trailer or even an apartment, it was like, they are rich. And so I grew up with the best friend, and her family, had a beautiful home. They had a swimming pool. She was an only child, had 32 Cabbage Patch Kids, very much the opposite of my life. And her dad was a small business owner. He owned a sign shop in Abilene. So we got to grow up going in that sign shop, seeing all of that, being exposed to that. And I think for the mere fact that I was exposed to all of that and got to see, because they say usually you stay wherever your parents are and you don't go above that. Right. And so I got to be exposed to somebody else's parents that were at this other level. And I feel like that ultimately helped me figure out, I'm not going to settle for this. I will not grow up living in trailers without, my necessities. I want to live this life. And I think that's what helped me. And I think my brother did not have that exposure. He's 5.5 years younger. I feel like when my parents divorced the second time, he was at a very much very young. He was a younger, more impressionable age is what I'm trying to say. And I think everything hit him like a ton of bricks a lot harder.
Yeah.
And it's not an excuse for the things that he's done, but I can look at that and people go, well, you came from the same parents in the same household. Totally different timelines, total different exposure to people. We went to different schools. So it's wild. It's just us two. Yeah.
I've got a younger brother, 3.5 years. And same thing. Very similar. I grew up in a trailer. And on the other side of the tracks, I was always really curious. I never wanted to have money problems growing up. It was like, all right.
Yes.
I loved my parents and, they didn't have the drug. It was just, they're a very loving family, but it was still paycheck to paycheck and trying to make ends meet and trying to provide. And it was a great childhood. Other than I just always understood that there was a kind of
it was a struggle.
It was a struggle.
Yeah.
And so at a very young age, I wanted to know what CNBC, like that channel with the stocks, I wanted to know what that was. And I wanted to understand that. Yeah. It's that curiosity. And that led me down a path of learning financial planning. And it changed my trajectory, but it was the same kind of, and I also see it as a gift, right? Because when you, the necessity as mother of all invention is across the board, right? If you're in a place where you're like, I got to get out of here and move up this chain or whatever this looks like, the steps, what does it take? And so you then just keep going.
And I was ultimately like the caretaker for my brother. Mm-hmm. My parents were working all the time. They call it parentification. So I had to become a parent at like 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And while that was traumatic, it actually made me one hell of an entrepreneur because I had to figure out how to problem solve, how to get up, how to get things ready, how to prepare meals, how to get everybody like ready and going. And while that was horrible for me, it did serve a certain purpose for me to make it later on in life. Mm-hmm. And so I think my parents, thank God that they made mistakes, but they did the best they could with the tools that they had. And I still, I talked to both my parents. They're both great now. And I even told my mom when I had my son at 44 and I'm like up with him all night long. And I'm like, how did a woman do this at 15? And I'm calling her like, I am so sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am so sorry because wow.
I see it from the other side now.
Yes. I see why certain things happen and choices you made because I don't think I could have done that. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But you could have, right? You would have just jumped over the barrel.
You would have figured it out.
Yeah.
Well, back to your point before.
I don't think we'd be sitting here right now, though.
Yeah, we could have a different conversation.
Yeah.
But back to you said before, I mean, different circumstances, different people. I mean, and that's what's wonderful about this show and just everybody's got a complex, like life is complex.
Yeah.
It just, you're handed a set of cards. And you got to figure out how you're going to play this game.
Yeah.
Right. And you can go sit in that one chair and be in that chair the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Or you can go and take on bigger issues and bigger company, bigger problems, bigger solves.
Right.
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 Or both, right? There's different seasons of life, right? Like it's sort of, I don't know. It's funny. I've also had this conversation with a lot of entrepreneurs where like they have job fantasies.
Yeah.
Like they know they can't actually go get a job just because it won't work for them. But like they're still like, oh man. And I mean, we're all victims.
Let's go get an antique shop and just look at antique. I'd be so bored.
Buy a Jersey Mike sub. Right?
Yes.
Whatever it is.
When you asked that question earlier, I hadn't thought about that. I was so intent listening to your answer, and I kind of felt what that answer was going to be because same boat. But, I don't believe entrepreneurism is a choice, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like you've got this burning desire inside to do something and nothing will satisfy it but doing the thing. Right. So it's like, you could quit and you think about that. But whenever I've thought about that, it was like that thought was like that short
felt
because
like
I was
suicide almost.
It's like if I'm going to quit, I'm going to do what? Like I remember my mom telling me, you can go get this job and make all this kind of money and this and that. I'm like, but it's a job. I don't have that control of my own kind of my vision.
Right.
And it's just so the thoughts have been like that short when it's like, do I do this? Yeah. For a financial reason, I can do this, but similar to what you said, I can just overcome this financial thing and then I'm off to the races again.
Yeah.
So
Well, so here's a question though that I think a lot about, because I've also had this observation. It's like when folks grow up in a modest background and then have some financial success, right? And we've talked about this before. I've never met that entrepreneur who's now satisfied, right? Or you might, as a young person, be concerned about having enough, and then when you're older, it's kind of the more money, more problems thing, right? I've had this observation that people's relationship to wealth and money is fairly consistent throughout their lives, even though their circumstances change a lot. And so, I don't know, I'm just curious if that rings true for you, right? Because I think I used to think like, oh man, wouldn't it be great to not worry about money or where the next paycheck's coming from? And then you stop worrying about that and you have this whole other set of problems. Yeah.
I've done a lot of therapy around this and feeling worthy of having money, because I feel like the longest I didn't have it because I didn't feel worthy of it. I grew up in a household where the mantra was the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I have had a therapist since, I don't know, 2008. And so she was like, you're going to have to reframe your mind around that. And part of that was like not doing hair anymore. It was huge for me, because I'm like, if these people that I work with don't see me on the floor doing hair, I'm not going to be connected to them anymore. They're going to be like, and I was picturing myself as the lady in the ivory tower again, that I was like, ugh, I hated her. I don't want to be that person. And I had to really wrap my head around, like, you're not that person, and whatever they think about you has nothing to do with you. Right. And I don't know if it is a lot of therapy, but also as you get older, you just stop giving a shit as much. Because now
there's that explicit label on the podcast.
There is, yes. Because I feel that. I truly feel that. And I even said that in the meeting yesterday. I said, if I was making all this cash and buying M&Ms with it, who are you to judge? Like, what? I'm not looking at what all your purchases are. We've got to, just get over that. And it's taken a long time. It did not happen easily. And I still struggle sometimes with, am I doing enough? Like, I help support my mom. I help support my niece, and I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah. I think a lot about that stuff. And the other thing that, like, am I doing enough, that I think I've run into personally is then people start to have expectations of you. And you're like, well, that's none of your business, right?
Yeah.
Or
I'm getting more and more.
I'm going to make whatever decision I'm going to make, but I don't really care what you think. And so it's, I don't know. I've felt that a little bit too, where it's like, there's just not an easy answer.
Because when I cared a lot about what people thought, I didn't have any money. Honestly. And I'd say that in a good way. Like, I care about people, but I can care about them and not care what they think about me. Right. Yeah.
So how much does your success as a business person enable you to be less sensitive to people's opinions?
A lot, I feel like. It's a part of it is what we talked about earlier, being desensitized over and over again to problems and issues and people and them not agreeing with the way you did this, X, Y, and Z. And I had to be like, if I don't do this, we will close our doors.
Right.
And so I have to.
It's if you're dealing with a higher level of the Donkey Kong game, you can see below and say, it's just, I'm not worried about level 1. That's where they're at.
Right.
And at least how I've experienced it or interpreted it is that that level, you understand what kind of drama that's at and all that kind of, and you know how to deal with it. It's now you're at a different level in your game, so you have to be desensitized to the bottom stuff, because you've already know how to figure that out. You know how to solve that. Yeah. What you don't know how to solve is a third location, fourth location, book. Like what's next? That's that's where your focus is at. So it has less to do with that. So it does help to go through all those stages. The other thing I want to comment on, I think the whole money and going through different scenarios from other side of the tracks to having more success. Yes, all of it comes with baggage because you grew up a little bit different. However, as you grow, the other side of that coin is that if you grow with means, do you strive as much? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I mean, I've had this conversation with, I have a group of real estate developers that I get together with, and that's like the number one conversation is, we went around the room at one point, we were talking about some of our early experiences, and what we realized was that we all started doing chores really early.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it was sort of like, oh, well, maybe that has something to do with it. Well, who's making their kids do chores early, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, well, maybe we're not, so it was just sort of an interesting kind of self-reflection where I do think clearly some of it's environmental.
Do you both have young kids? Yours is 4.
Yeah.
Just one?
Just one. Yep.
And you have
8 and 1.
Yeah. Mine's 21. And this is something I worry about because my daughter has a lot more than I had and a lot more opportunity than I have that that's why I'm doing the things I do is to pass it on. Right. And so I do worry about, the values that I grew up with and I struggled through to get to and to learn and all of that. And I try to obviously talk with her all the time and kind of instill those, but it's not the same as if you're going through it. So I'm just kind of curious y'all's perspective. Do you guys worry about that?
I do. Yeah, because my son has a wildly different lifestyle than I do, So I worry that he's going to be some trust fund kid with no, cares, because I see that where it's a lifestyle blogger because her parents are multimillionaires. She doesn't have to work. Like, I know people like that. And there's a part of me that I'm like, I'm also don't think I would let my son, like, I have certain expectations from him because of what I did so I already see, I don't think he's going to be like that. I don't know. However, I just feel like he's going to grow up around entrepreneurial parents and see how they are and what they do. And I feel like that will have an impact on him. Yeah. But to say I don't worry that he's going to be some kid that games all the time and just lives off mom and dad, I do worry about that too. Because I'm like, you want this? Because I try to give him everything I didn't have. Right. And I don't know if that's creating a monster or not. Yeah.
I worried about that so much. Her mom and myself divorced when she was 3. And she, I was, as probably you guys, I was never offered a choice to what was going to be for dinner. It was just like, Mom made this. Cool.
It was food.
Right? But my daughter, every single day of her life, what do you want to eat? It's the question. And I think that's what, as parents, we probably do even to this day. I mean, to this day, I'm guilty of that. And that simple thing is a kind of just a whole valley apart of how one grew up. And it makes you like, that changes your personality completely. Because I know now sometimes I'm like, hey, you want to eat this? No, I want this. I want this. And it's a different life. So you're like kind of wondering, like, how am I impacting by being what I think is a better parent? Because it means I'm also not allowing her to appreciate simple things.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I will say, just because your kids are younger than mine is that there was a time when I was more worried than I am now.
Oh, okay.
Now at 21, I see that she's come around a lot more into wanting to improve herself, into working for dad's business and like just like even interning. And I've started her at all these things. She is also very vocal because we've always, at the house, you're just like, you just express what you feel and we'll talk it out. And now as an intern in the company, she's really vocal to everybody. I'm like, oh,
nobody cares.
Well, it's like, hey, we know she's the boss's daughter, but at the same time, there's no governor, like, so it's one of those things. But aside from that, and it's not that bad. It's just, I am starting to see the appreciation for life, the appreciation for school, the appreciation for like getting focused, which there was a time period I was like, oh my God, I was pulling my hair out. Like, how do we instill this? So it is another area of complexity that one has to deal with as you're going through your own growth.
Well, it's funny too, right? Because in that same group of people, I had the version of this conversation, and somebody made the point that like, if you can teach your kids how to create meaning and value, and that isn't tied to a financial reality, then that's like the thing. And I was like, that's pretty funny that you say that, because you also have a helipad in your front yard. And so it's like,
a lot of value.
Wow. Yeah.
But it was, but I think that like his point was like, look, I have this like ostentatious display of wealth that like his children were confused the first time they got on a commercial airplane. Like they just didn't understand how it worked. And he was like that on the one hand, like I'm deeply self-conscious of that. And I don't want to mess my kids up. But at the same time, like I'm not going to not use my helipad. So I also, like this was the other way. And I always thought that was like a very interesting, I don't have a helipad, but like it was an interesting way to think about it because it's like no matter what level of wealth you have, that feels like a pretty good approach.
Yeah. You keep yourself centered and keep yourself in conversations.
Yeah.
This conversation reminded me of a conversation with her, because the other thing is dating, right? At what age do they date and what does this look like? And it's just completely different than your realm. And because she lived with her mom at the time, I didn't have as much say in that. So I just kind of went with it, but I would always have those conversations. And to see the kind of chaos that happens dating really young. Yeah. Because once you get to a point of like, we love each other, like each other, there's nothing else because there's nothing else there's no more other value. You mentioned value. And so I've had conversations with her. It's like, look, maybe you on your own for a while and develop the value, develop this inside. And it's hard having that discussion because you don't get it at first, but then over time, going through breakups and seeing all that kind of happen, and you have these discussions, and now she gets it. She's like, yeah, I don't want to have a boyfriend for another 2 years. She's doing all kinds of, crazy cool things that she's experiencing. And I love seeing that now.
I love that.
But it is, we had that value conversation. It's like currently you have zero value to offer a companion. So there's just it's just frustrating. It's going to end up in frustration if you end up dating without a value that you can kind of provide value to the other person in a relationship. And so I know that's a really big conversation to have, but can you
imagine if your parents would have had that conversation with you? That is huge. Yeah, for sure. So. And my niece who's 21, who is at UT and she lived with us part of the summer, she's same exact thing where she's like, no, thank you. I'm going to be single. And I'm like, I wish I had been that way.
Right.
What a different life it would have been. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I have the perception that younger folks are a little bit more that way now than I think we were.
Because they're not, it's when you grow up in Abilene at 21, it was like, are you married? Do you have
how many kids do you have?
Yeah. And some people are still that way in these smaller towns, it's wild.
I would say the majority probably because it's like the environment.
Yes.
Yeah. And, not that there's anything wrong with it either, right? Like for some people it works, but I think it's, it's like you said, it was like you knew.
Those are the choices that you have there.
Yeah.
Those are the choices you have at that place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So. No, I got the heck out. I literally moved to Austin the day after I graduated from high school.
It's so funny. It's so funny. I had the same burning desire. I was just like, there was nothing wrong with Scranton, right? I just wanted to get out. Just to go do something else.
Yeah. I've got an uncle who lives in Abilene. How many people live in Abilene?
Like 150,000.
All right.
So, and I lived in Throckmorton until I was 8. That's where my parents grew up. And it's a town of like 700 now.
My uncle lives in Ty, which is close by. I don't know how big.
So I wasn't allowed to complain. They were like, this is a big city. And I'm like, no, it's not. But to me, I'm like, Austin's a big city.
The reason I asked that, and how big is Scranton?
Well, I don't know what it is right now, but it was about 80,000 when I was growing up. It's just the population has been plummeting for 100 years.
So I grew up in a cattle town, Hereford, Texas.
Yeah.
15,000 people, 100,000 cattle.
Oh my gosh.
So imagine that. I mean, you guys lived in Metropolis. So it was completely different. And I couldn't wait to get the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah.
I mean, the funnest thing that we did in Hereford was travel to Amarillo, which is 45 minutes away to go watch a movie.
Yeah.
That's the country lifestyle. So, yeah.
It's funny though how you go and spend a bunch of time in big cities and you're like, you know what? I want to go have a house where there's no people.
I never thought I would be that person, and I'm that person now.
Yeah.
You hit a certain age and you're like, yeah, no, thank you. I don't want to put me in a cabin.
Been there, done that. I just want some quiet.
Yes.
I want peace.
Yes.
So what would you tell if you could go talk to your 16-year-old self at the beginning of that cosmetology journey, right? Like there's a lot of learning. It's like what are the more important things?
Well, I really believe that there's no such thing as mistakes, even though, I beat myself up incessantly for making them. I really, if I changed anything, I feel like I wouldn't be sitting on this couch today. And I try to think of that sometimes as myself, is like, if the future you was here, she would be telling you everything's okay and it's going to work out. Yeah. And then that will help calm me down in the moment. But I didn't learn that tool till like 3 years ago, maybe, in the pandemic. So I know it sounds cliche, but I would just tell her everything's going to work out. But I really wish I could tell her, like, you don't need a man.
Right.
You can have two pieces of advice.
You don't need to, like, wait till you're 25 and date a little bit. And I think that's probably why my niece is single, because I am been like, don't.
You've mentioned it before.
If I had to go back, I'd say buy Google, buy Apple, buy these
stocks, get Bitcoin right when it comes out. Yeah.
The Google thing's funny. I was just telling somebody this. So I went to that Bill Gurley talk. I'm a total fanboy. He's also the only VC I know who's taller than me. And he was telling us about when he said, I didn't pass on Google. I failed to pursue them because these 2 PhDs in computer science. So like already as an investor, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And he was like, the hard part about this business is that you meet these people and they don't check your boxes and all of your best decisions are violating your own rules. Right. And I wasn't wise enough in that moment to do that, was sort of how he put it. I failed to pursue them, and other people had the same rules that I did, but they knew to break them because there was an opportunity here. Right. And it's sort of like, I don't know, as soon as I asked you, what would you tell yourself? I was like, what would I tell myself? Right. And I was like, well, none of those rules would actually work because you have to break them all.
You do. And I wouldn't have anything I would want myself to do then. I wouldn't have had the means to do it anyway. Like, I had to have that relationship and that person to live with to come to Austin to then fail here. I mean, everything had to happen the way it had to happen, and I say, I wish I would have become part of the summit or the consultant room quicker, but I wouldn't have heard what they were telling me at that point, and it just wouldn't have registered. Yeah.
It's a perfect map.
Yeah.
One of the things, going back to just the word failure, I may have mentioned this before. I had the privilege of interviewing like the top scientists out of Austria. They came to DC for a conference. It was like 8 series I had to go do. So I'm sitting here. Talk about the most nervous podcast I've been. Like, you're talking to these geniuses that like, and the like, just prepping for this because the lingo is out of this world. Like, like trying to figure out what are you talking about. But one of them, so I enjoyed them all, and I learned a bunch from them all. But one of them had this unique perspective. Right? You grab things from different podcasts and you just carry them with you. But his unique perspective around failure is like, you Americans, and I'm going to do a bad Australian accent. I don't do Austrian accent. But it was with an accent. Imagine an Austrian accent. He's like, you Americans, use this word failure. We don't like the word failure. In science, we call it testing. Mm-hmm. He says, because and he goes into talking about creating a light bulb, took 1,000 tests to be able to get that. And that's just the frame of mind. Yeah. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, it's such a great, he embraces that. It is, yeah. And I don't think we see that enough. I mean, when we say failure, because I think our school systems, you get the F, and it's like, you've got to pass, you've got to do this. It's this whole culture thing. But at the end of the day, if it's like, look at every F and like, how do I improve that to a C, to an A, or a B, whatever that is. And so I embrace failure. And I think that's the thing that you can go back and like, I try to tell that to my daughters, like she comes home with a good grade or she comes with a bad grade. I'm like, so she came home with a, 50 or 60 the other day. And I remember having those kind of grades. Right. And I also have taken so many tests since then. And I just, the advice wasn't like, oh, do better. It was think about how those questions were asked. Because sometimes the people asking the questions don't write them the way you're thinking about it. You got to kind of think bigger than that. And so that's the kind of advice that you end up like, just so that it's on you. It's like, learn from this. How did you read this question differently than what it was asked? And then learn how to read that question again differently in the future. So anyway, couple just things that I felt impacted me as I heard that. I thought that was great. So when you talk about failures, that's
I know, because every time I look at it, I'm like, well, I wouldn't have figured this out if I wouldn't have done that, Yeah, so.
They're just things that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
I have really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's been
wonderful.
Yeah.
Just being out there, being real, and being yourself, and your audience that listens to this is going to be like fall in love with you even more. That's what audiences do whenever people are just kind of real with what
truth.
life is. So, thanks for being with us.
Of course. Thanks y'all for having me.
This is great.
Yeah.
What a powerful conversation with Chelle Neff. Her entrepreneurial journey from sweeping floors at Supercuts to redefining the salon industry with Urban Betty reminds us of the power of perseverance and purpose. Chelle's insights on building a people-focused business, navigating personal challenges, and continuing to grow despite adversity are lessons for all of us. If this episode resonated with you, share it with your network and leave us a review. It helps us reach even more listeners. Until next time, keep embracing the complexities of life, and we'll see you back here soon.